Hi, I'm Chayale.
Hi, I'm Hinty. Welcome to Your Relationshift. Join in our conversation where we explore
The nuance and beauty of Torah's perspective on relationships.
Hey Kyla, I wanted to share with you something that someone sent in. They wanted this addressed, so I thought it would be cool for us to read it out loud for our listeners and then see what comes up. So
Amazing.
this woman writes, my husband is great. He's a really great guy. My problem are his mothers and sisters. She finds that he's leaning on them a lot. He calls them, listens to their advice, spends more time with them than she feels is necessary, and basically just feels like his priorities are mixed up. And would like to know what direction to go with that.
Really, really great question. And I
Yeah.
definitely that's relatable for so many people. It's the age-old mother-in-law, boys and their moms challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I've even seen a book that's titled, I didn't actually read it, but the title caught my attention, When He's Married to His Mother.
That's harsh.
Right. There's a
Whole
lot of
book
jokes
on that. Wow.
that I wonder what's in there, but there's a lot of jokes on it, and I think also a lot of psychology. Like, it's a big subject. It really is. Like,
Yeah.
Men's relation, boys and their mothers, the attachment, and then I do hear this a lot from people, like when the wife comes into the picture, feeling like she comes second to. I mean, this woman added in sisters, which I guess could also be like you have both, but she's coming second to his mother, maybe also second to mother and sisters. That's just adding more people to the mix. But yeah, I'm thinking of two people recently that came up in coaching that one person, they had the in-laws over for Yom Tov, and she felt like there was a major prioritizing of, her husband tending to her mother, to his mother. And that the piece about advice, like her husband feeling like he turns to his mother for advice, and I don't know if this came up in the question, but even if she'll say the same thing, like it's more legitimate if his mother said it than if she said it, and feeling very frustrated. I mean, maybe you can speak to like let's talk about what that brings up. Like, why is that painful?
Yeah, so just to add on to what you're saying, I think even Yiddishkeit acknowledges that this relationship is a relationship. I mean, we've spoken about it before, but the idea that underneath the chuppah, the chassan smashes the glass, and some people say, "Why is it a glass? Why is it a glass? Why is it not a plate? Why is it not, I don't know, a bowl?" And the idea is that it's supposed to be symbolic of the fact that he, as an unmarried man, used to be receptive, a receiver from his parents. And like here we're saying specifically, let's say his mom. And now he's smashing that because now he is going to enter into a new reality of becoming a mashpia to his wife. Now he is going to be the man of the family and the one to be the mashpia. So what I love about that is that it makes space for the transition period between what it takes for a man to change from being receptive to the people around him, specifically to his parents, to his mother, to now change over to be something new, like he's an entirely new being. Now, I know a woman goes through a similar transition somewhat where she was like taking care of herself, but she's always supposed to take care of herself. And she could have been super receptive before she got married. I feel like the marriage itself is very drastic for a husband to transition from that receptivity to now I am a mashpia. And I thought that was interesting and important to mention because Yiddishkeit does address that this is something. It's there.
That's so cool. I didn't know that about the glass. I just thought it was about dash. I've never heard that one. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And also, what I actually thought you were going to say, which is what it's like when it talks about a man getting married, like he's going to leave his house, he's going to leave his home, and he's going to attach himself to his wife. So also kind of addressing that there is stages of like the leaving is there's something there, like there's something that has to be left and something that has to be like attached to. I'm also hearing our audience thinking, well, I've been married for, so many years and it's still going on. So like, it wasn't just like a transition that I had to be patient for and wait. So yeah, I think let's speak to what that might bring up for somebody when she sees her husband calling his mother, leaning on his mom.
Yeah. So first of all, it might impact the way she looks at him in general, like views him. She could see it as childish. She could see it as immature. It could break down her ability to like trust him because she just doesn't respect him as much. That could be the experience. It could be just a lot of judgments, like why can't you have your priorities straight? Obviously, I should be the most important thing in your life, and I'm not. It could also just be pain, right? So it doesn't necessarily impact how she's viewing him, but just like makes her feel like nothing, makes her feel like I don't weigh in, I'm not important, and like an extreme lack of essential value. I would imagine those would be pretty relatable experiences for most women going through that.
Yeah, I would say probably the starting point would be a lack of value, because usually that's what's behind the judgment. We're not, I don't, you could tell me if I'm wrong. I think that we're not judging people when we feel secure.
Right.
I think it's right. It's a protection. So the immediate feeling is like, oh, I'm not enough. Or like you trust your mother more than you trust me. Or you feel more connected to your mother than you feel connected to me. She feels safer. In whatever way, right? Like that relationship is preferable, or your sisters, right? Like you trust your sisters, I don't know, let's say he's asking his sisters if she likes his suit. So you trust your sister's fashion advice more than you trust mine. There's going to be a lot of triggers in terms of like how he perceives me and my value and the strength of our connection and the strength of our relationship. Like definitely women want to feel like I am the center of, my husband's world. And we could get, women can get a little carried away with like wanting to be everything to their husbands. So, and then if they're not, then that means something about them and it means something about how he sees them. So I think, I guess, to the questioner, to acknowledge what it's bringing up for her.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot. It's painful. It brings everything into question. It could really go pretty far. Like it could really make her question herself and him and their relationship to a pretty extreme sense. And I think it's important to make space for that. If anyone's going through something like that, that's very intense and very relatable. Okay, so what to do? What can we do about this?
Right. Let me add one more piece, which I think is important to address. If a woman doesn't go there, like sometimes either it feels too vulnerable to like address her own insecurity, or that there might be something wrong with their relationship. So she might find herself like heavily judging. She might find herself heavily judging the mom and saying like, oh, she hasn't let go. She's controlling. She is, like...
she's the problem.
She's the problem, right? Like she doesn't have healthy boundaries, and she's like, why doesn't she leave her son alone and let him be a married man? And if he calls her, she should say like, where's your wife? Like having, sort of getting really frustrated at her, or even the sisters, like, that's weird. Tell your husband to go home. Tell him to go talk to his wife. Or if he asks you your advice, tell him to ask his wife what she thinks. Kind of like feeling, oh, this is a family issue. This is an unhealthiness on the family's part. So that also, like, the judgment, I still think the core of it is the main pain or struggle is that feeling of lack of value and insecurity, but it could either lead to judgment of him, or just judgment of the whole family, or specifically like hating on her mother-in-law. And it's such an easy thing to do because you'll get so much
support.
Yeah, it's not so much support from your family, from your friends. Like everyone jumps on that bandwagon very quickly. Like controlling
the world, right? The world will support you.
So it's not a hard narrative to just quickly step into and like then explain away your your insecurity by, okay, I have this very, very disturbed, unhealthy, controlling, doting, whatever mother.
Right. And I again, awareness to our listeners, there are some mother-in-laws that are difficult out there. And it's true. There are some mother-in-laws that maybe haven't let go of their sons. I want to make space for that. We're not saying that it's all, you're delusional and it's all in your head and you're making something out of nothing. That's not true, right? You might have a lot of evidence for everything that we're bringing here. The point is this dynamic is not working between your husbands. It's impacting your relationship. It's impacting you. So what to do now, right? So relationship is all about, what can I create? Hashem didn't put me in a situation to make me just feel stuck and suffer through it. So what can I do to spring forward into something that obviously I'm supposed to grow into here? And that's what we're here to discuss, right? So there's a lot of opportunities to wallow or to joke or to, complain about that. And there's like many forums for that, I'm sure. So, but here in our short episode, we want to just address maybe some small things you could implement or change, or perceptions that can shift to help be creative in a situation like this.
Amazing. That was very clear. And so important to point out that, yes, it could actually be true, meaning we're not saying it's not the case. There might be a lot of that you're dealing with. Like we've said in other conversations, birthday, phone, these things we're humans and we struggle and we live with real situations. The question is, are we stuck or do we have choice? And where is that choice? And depending on the choices we make, we'll go in different directions. So you mentioned, let's focus on the solutions. The first thing that's coming to mind for me is, in general, it's very easy to focus on what's not working. In our relationships, like, it's very easy to notice, or it's default, or comes more naturally to us to notice the time that my husband went to ask his mother for advice instead of me. But is that always, right? Am I even noticing all the times that he's not? Meaning, just a focus, like we have a wiring that has us focusing on lack. And can we direct our attention to, instead of what's not, what is?
I love that. Beautiful. So what is, right? What is for her in this situation? Let's just come up with what is. And then what will happen with that? So her focusing on what is, what will that create, right? What are we striving towards? Like an abundance of how he does show up, right? So like, instead of it just, like in general, what is complaining? Complaining is just a full stop, right? I don't know, my stomach was hurting the other day. And I was conscious of how I kept on saying it, like, oh, my stomach, right? Instead of saying, I wish my stomach wouldn't be hurting, or like, I would love for this to settle down. That was a totally different way of addressing what's coming up for me. Mm-hmm. Instead of it just being a complaint, which is just a full stop, I'm suffering. It's, I would love for something to open up. And even for myself, I was like, you know what, let me drink some water. Maybe that will help, right? Like, solutions will come if I express what I want, or if I'm looking for opportunity, opening, as opposed to a full stop. So we could complain and look for lack all the time. But if I'm going to look for what is, then what I'm doing is I'm opening up possibility. This is what I have. This is what I also would love. This is all open, as opposed to this is all that's happening.
That's really cool. Yeah, when you have a sense of what is and what could be, that already shifts the energy very dramatically. And till you're there, you're not able to feel the relief, or let's say in your example, to think of drinking water, because you're so consumed by the fact that you're in pain. So it doesn't even, like, solutions don't even surface in that space. But as soon as you shift out of the complaining mode to the, first of all, what is present, and second of all, what could be, then you'll be surprised at where your mind, things that will even just be able to come into your mind. It's creating space even inside your own head for different ideas and thoughts to come in.
Yeah. Such a good point. Like, what makes that change, because oftentimes I know for myself, like if I'm in pain or if I'm suffering, right, you just feel like you're just stuck. How could you help pull yourself out of a pit? It's almost like you can't. So I have found that for some people it's just hitting rock bottom, or they're just completely tired with being frustrated and angry and upset all the time, and they're willing to, like, is there anything else out there for me to try something new? Or they just like change their identity. I like this way of behaving is not what I want. I want to behave some way different. I want to change the dynamic. And so that is, you haven't yet changed the dynamic, but you're like transitioning into something else. That's such an important point that you're making. And then I love that, because back to what we were talking about before with like stuckness or just a stoppage or a lack. So like complaining about it, judging him, letting him know what he's doing is wrong, having a conversation about it and pointing out how often he's spending time with his mother, giving him the timestamps, showing him his phone, like all that kind of stuff is all that lack language and that lack energy, as opposed to if she could transition into something different, which is, what do I want? How do I want to take care of myself? How do I want this relationship to look? Would there be another way for me to see this? What is already here? Can I see how my husband is showing up for me, how he is showing up for my family? When he does, I don't know, take my advice into consideration, like then I'm opening up to so much more. There's infinite opportunity there. It's open, as opposed to hitting
Yeah.
a rock wall.
And I think moving with this energy, do I view his mother, his sisters, as I've been viewing them as a threat to my value and our connection? And is that, when we talk about different ways of seeing something, right? That's a belief that I've attached to. And is that belief serving me? And is it fact? And is it, like, yes, you have evidence for a dynamic that's powerful, but is that the whole truth and nothing but? And I remember speaking to somebody who we were having a conversation about her mother-in-law, and she was feeling like her mother-in-law was a very overwhelming presence. Just like a lot, like around a lot. And when she was around, like she had a lot of suggestions and a lot of, like, she just felt very there. And we spoke about the tool of the LCI, where the love, care, intention, to not look at her as a threat, but to look at her as a loving mother and mother-in-law who loves her child and loves her child's wife and wants to give generously and wants to be part of their world and wants to show up for them. And what if I looked at her in that way and received what she was giving her child, and what she was, or even what she wants, or that she wants to give, and that she cares? That kind of softens the whole dynamic. So I don't know, this person who I was discussing it with, she was very like polite and kind of shy. So she felt like if her mother-in-law suggested something, then that was it. Like then they had to go with that suggestion, or she had to say yes, or even if she offered to, I don't know, to make them dinner. And like she just felt very overwhelmed because she was her mother-in-law was a much stronger personality than she was, and she had a very close relationship with her son. And so when we spoke about the LCI, when she could say, like, just receive her intention as a good intention, like receive her as a good person who cares, then, and what you said, which is also knowing what she wants. Let's say she wants to make dinner. So I'm so grateful thank you for your generosity. We're good with dinner tonight, or I've actually like taken care of it, or I'm excited to make dinner, whatever she's gonna say. But then it's not, there's no threat. There's just a person who cares. You can receive that love and you can continue to live your life. So I think a combination of adjusting your belief about your mother-in-law being somebody that's like, why would a mother ultimately want to ruin her child's marriage? Like, maybe you're even a mother yourself right now, and you want your children to be happy. So your presence or your involvement is there because you care, right? Most mothers, again, within the range of normal, are showing up because they care so much, they love their children so much, and they just want to support and help. So if I'm able to bring that belief in and see it as a love, care, intention, and then I can receive the intention, and if whatever the offer is or whatever the suggestion is or it doesn't work for me, so then I have to go to what you were saying before, which is I also have to know myself, and I have to be able to take ownership and honor my own voice and be able to share what works for me and what doesn't work for me. But it's very different when I'm sharing that from a space of, you are destroying our lives, or you are ruining our marriage, or you have us trying to steal my husband and I have to fight against you, or you are a person who loves us, cares about us, wants the best for us, and very generous and very sweet and very involved and all those things. And also here I am, and I want to make my own dinner, and I want to buy my children their own clothes, whatever it is. It's just a totally different experience when you're coming at it from that place. Like the whole, the tension and the stress, I feel like softens a lot when you're able to look for the guy.
I love that. And it also highlights what you're saying, highlights the power of receptivity, that in my way of interpreting / receiving what she's bringing actually could change what she's bringing to be an entirely different situation. I could choose to see like, oh, super controlling mother-in-law has to be involved in every aspect of our lives. And because I'm receiving it that way, that's just how it's going to be. And that's what the dynamic is going to change to become. And even if the mother-in-law's intent was a little bit controlling, let's say, then what's happening is I'm fully, let's say it's like the percentages, right? So let's say it was like 25% a little bit controlling or codependent, or I don't know, not respecting boundaries. The way I'm receiving it, if I receive 25% of that, and I'm receiving it as it's 100% that, then that's what it is. As opposed to, if I choose to receive it differently, maybe it's also 25% she just loves her kids and her children. And she just wants to be involved. And she always had this vision of being like a bubby who shows up for her grandkids and for her children and her in-laws. Like, then I could choose to receive it in that way. And then that's how I see her 100%. Right? So what I'm highlighting, what you're saying is, as an active receiver, you actually can change the dynamic and change the situation based on how you perceive it and choose to receive it, which is amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah. Very well said.
It's tremendous. And then also, like, I was giving this as an example yesterday to someone because we were talking about her husband's values, which is really beautiful. And I was saying that your kids will see your husband's values, what he lives by, or the actions that he takes that hopefully complement or reflect his values. Your kids will pick up on it. Unless a wife, let's say, looks at certain actions of her husband and says, and interprets them differently, right? So the example is, let's say the husband is a Hatzalah member and he is so ibrikageben, he's so given over to the community. He gives all of his time, his resources, his attention, his life to the community and saving people's lives. So the kids could see that and they think like, wow, my father's a hero. Look what he does for Am Yisrael. Or they could see it the way, let's say, a mom could be seeing it, which is, he's never with us. Hatzalah took over our lives. And I wish he let other people in Hatzalah also have a chance, right? So then now that value system is not trickling directly down to the children the way the husband is exhibiting those values. Her perception is now also there. And that can change the way that they're going to view something that he's doing. So again, you as an active receiver and the way that you perceive a situation is going to shape the reality. And that's for you, it's for your family, and it impacts the giver, the person who's bringing something to you, be it the husband, the mother-in-law, the sisters, whatever it is, whoever it is.
It's incredible how powerful this tool is, where your perception and your active receptivity can establish or switch over a dynamic into something positive that wasn't necessarily initially so. That's like the number one power tool, I think. Any more tools that you want to bring in for this challenge?
Yeah, I think you were kind of saying it already, but just to give the relationship language to it, which is trust the connection. So that very much ties into what you were initially saying about the abundance principle. But if I'm going to reflect to my husband that I trust him and there's an abundance of trust in our relationship, then I could see a lot more of that showing up for me, as opposed to if I'm going to show him the lack of what's happening in our relationship because of so and so, then I'm going to see a lot more of that lack show up for me. So again, I'm not asking women to like pretend that there's connection or like pretend that you can trust him. I want you to do that in a realistic and genuine, authentic way. Is there something there for you to lean on, to trust, to see that your husband is showing up, and let him know and see that you trust that. You trust that you're his priority. You trust that he cares about his kids, and he cares about being in our house, and he cares about your opinion. And it takes a lot to be able to exhibit that trust, right? Like basically drawing from everything you were talking about before. It takes working on your essential value. It takes switching your mindset around seeing abundance instead of seeing lack. It takes the ability to choose what you want to see. That's a really powerful and empowering experience, but it takes effort. And when I could reflect that back to him, I think that changes the dynamic and brings about other results, right? So if a husband sees my wife trusts me, my wife knows that if I'm answering this call to my mother, it doesn't mean if there's not like going to be like a whole reaction of like, again, and like the seething side eye. So he knows there's like this safety. If I could take this call or I can't, I don't have to hide in the bathroom to talk to my mother, like which breaks more trust because now you're doing it behind her back, right? So it just like it creates an ability for him to just, there's safety here, there's no lack of trust here. And now he also could decide, how do I want to show up? Well, actually my wife is always in a good mood and she's like everything's great and she trusts me. I want to spend more time with her. She seems so civilized and has her head on straight. I want to hear what her opinions are, instead of seeing steam coming out of her, nose and ears. And that doesn't look like a person I want to talk about this really complicated situation with because she feels too volatile. I'm just saying, just simply, I'm laughing, but in all seriousness, it takes a lot to be able to turn around a dynamic like that. And kudos to anyone who's listening, who is thinking maybe I could implement some of this, because it's a big deal.
Trust the connection with essential value creates the foundation for being in a healthy relationship. I have value. That is a fixed fact. We are connected. That is a fixed fact. The more we work on those two principles and ingrain them in our being, the more secure we are in our relationship. And it's work. I'm saying this takes time to build my own confidence in myself and in my value, and believing in my value and believing that my opinion does matter and that my husband chose me. Like these are principles that I think I can speak for all the coaches. These are principles that I am growing on a daily basis. Like you don't ever get to the finish line of essential value and trust the connection. They're active things that we work on consistently, and they make the relationship stronger and stronger and stronger. So any of these situations, like you mentioned in the beginning, you're being challenged with your mother-in-law. This is Hashem's invitation. Build your confidence, trust your connection more. Build your confidence, trust your connection more. It's like you're being invited by Hashem to become a stronger, more connected, better version of yourself. Another maybe tool or perspective that's coming to me is why do you speak to your parents, right? Like a woman can ask herself, why do I call my own mother, right? Why do I ask my mother? Because A, I want a relationship with her. She's my mother, my parents. And B, there's a mitzvah. There's, it's as Sarah said, Deborah's kibud over aim is a huge, huge, huge deal. And you mentioned before, like teaching your children a value system. So do my children grow up seeing parents that respect their parents, that make time for their parents, that honor their parents? And kibud over aim is a really, really hard mitzvah. It's on the first side of, it's ben adam lamakom. It's not ben adam lachavera, even though technically it is ben adam lachavera, because it takes a tremendous amount of yer shemayim to maintain a healthy relationship with your parents as you become an independent adult, married with your own children, and as your parents age and have their humanness. And when we talk about space and value, give your husband space to do that mitzvah in the way that he wants to and knows how, and as he will give you space for you to do it with your parents, like there's this mutual respect that you want to create of, I admire you for working on your relationship with your parents, for respecting your parents, for being somebody who keeps that mitzvah in an active way. And I myself can look at my relationship with my parents, right? Maybe part of where the judgment is coming from is there might be something lacking there, or maybe I'm not as invested. So just again, another angle, like when we're out of that place of victim mode and threatened and stuck, then our mind can open up to see this from more angles and to find value here, value in our mother-in-law, value in our husbands, value in the mitzvah. All these things can really create a bit more of a healthier, happier perspective, dynamic, and picture of your relationship and your husband.
I think that makes so much sense, and it's such an important point to bring, like the value of kibud over aim. Yeah, and still, I just want to give so much credit to someone listening to the podcast, and going through this. Takes a lot to change around this dynamic and to work on something like this. So bring us your questions, bring us your comments, what worked, what didn't work, what you don't understand. And we'd love to hear from you, and we could address it in the next podcast if it needs addressing. So thank you all, and see you next time.
Thank you.
We would love to hear your feedback, thoughts, and questions.
Please leave a comment below or email us at yourrelationship@gmail.com.
Looking forward to connecting with you.
See you next time.